Okay, everyone. Let's bring up the Shulchan Aruch. Happy Erev Purim to everyone. Hey, Barbara. Oops. Let's bring up the full page here. Okay. So we are holding in Kitzur. It's page 70. It's chapter 76, halacha 2. Okay. So we're learning we're learning about the laws of the prayers of Shabbos and Yom Tov. So we started off, we'll just do a quick recap of law number 1. Noigim lahagdim tfilas arvish or Shabbos yosim be'zachol. We daven, what we're meant to daven Friday night earlier than we would on during the week. We went through the Zmanim last class. Nachin hukidei lahagdim Kabbalah Shabbos b'chol ma'ash efshar, so we could start with the Kabbalah Shabbos, accepting the Shabbos as early as possible. Rak she'emi plaga minchel ma'ila has to be from the last quarter of the day of the halachic day, hour and 15 minutes. Sorry. So from the which is called plaga mincha. We reviewed the zmanim last class. Even one who has the custom to daven the evening prayers in its proper time, meaning when tzeis, when the stars come out, when the stars come out. One can accept Shabbos, start the Ma'ir of Kabbalah Shabbos a little earlier. After Kabbalah Shabbos starts with what we do today, L'chadodi and L'chuniraner, etc. Even if, hey, Aaron, just doing a quick review of the first law, of even if during the week we sometimes would be davening mincha at this time, we still don't we don't get concerned about this when it comes to Friday night. Because there's a specific, hey Ariel, this is a specific requirement to add on into the Shabbos. So therefore we take in the Kabbalah Shabbos, we take in a little bit early. Okay, so that law we studied last week. Now we're holding over here. So we're going to go through the laws of the prayers on Shabbos. Now, we all know, I'm going to bring a siddur so we have it in front of me. We all know that one of the last prayers on the evening prayer is the prayer of Hashkivenu. So we have we have two in the morning. We have one blessing after the Shema, and in the evening we have two blessings: the Michamocha and the Hashkivenu. We have a different ending for the Hashkivenu during the week and how we end it during the Friday night. So during the week, at least the nusach, the wording in the Chabad in the Siddur of Dari is the idea of Shomer Am Yisrael, one who watches the Jewish people. On Friday night we finish that Hapoires Sukkah Shalom Aleinu, the one who Hashem who spreads His peace over us. So we changed the ending of the blessing of Hashkivenu for between Shabbos and the weekday, or Shabbos Yom Tov and the weekday. So here he's going to explain why. When it comes to the final blessing on Friday night, before we do the Amidah, the Shemona Esrei, so he says, Ein chaismim kamoi b'chol shomer am Yisrael. We don't finish the blessing, he who watches the Jewish people. Shomer is a watcher. Kivan, shebracha zu hi haklos am Yisrael, because this is asking, requesting, or making a statement, a blessing for God who watches all the Jewish people. Uklolis am Yisrael ein tzrichim shmir b'Shabbos. The Jewish people as a whole don't need a special washing on Shabbos, a special, so to say, extra watchful eye on the Shabbos. Why not? The Shabbos watches us. Now we're going to see something very interesting about this law in a few laws going forward. But as of now, we finished during the week Shomer Am Yisrael, God who watches the Jewish people. In the week, we're asking God for special hashkacha, special watchfulness on the Jewish people. Shabbos, that blessing is not required to the Jewish people as a whole. What he means by as a whole, as opposed to an individual. Why? Because Shabbos itself is a general watching over the Jewish people. And therefore, Elohim ufrais, God who spreads over us His peace. The chaismim, and the end of the blessing is, again, obviously there's different exact nuschaos. different exact verbiage, but the idea is Baruch Atah Hashem, blesses He Hashem, HaPoires, who spreads His peace over His people, and so too is the blessing after the Hashkivenu on Yom Tov. So Yom Tov and Shabbos has a Poires, and on the weekday we say Shomer. Im Tov V'Siyim K'may B'Chol. What happens out of by mistake, and that happens all the time, the mistakes because we're davening fast, we don't pay attention, what have you. If one makes a mistake on Friday night, Shabbos, and finishes it like one would do it on the week, is im nisker miyad lachet tevis la'ad. If right after you said Shemirath Am Yisrael la'ad, you remember and you say, then you remember that you made a mistake. So what should you do? Is yomer miyad ha'payris sukkah shalom? Then you should change it to the completion of how you're supposed to do it on Shabbos. That's if you did it right afterwards, within like toch k'dei dibur, within like right after you said it, you realized your mistake. Aval if however im lo nisker ad la'achar k'dei dibur, but if after you've already said it and kind of stopped and then you remember that you've completed it wrong, then you wouldn't go back and change it. There's a concept in halacha called techdei dibur, where you could pull your words back as long as it's within, so to say, the words settle. It's like a yellow light. The words settle first. So if they haven't settled yet, you could bring them back. We find that with many things in tefillah and brachas, how you could, if you're toch k'dei dibur, you could change it back. But once you've already passed it, and sometimes let's say you're ahead of the minyan, and you've completed the blessing, and you said Hashomer, and then a minute or so later, you hear the chazan saying Hapayres, and you realize your mistake. So then it's too late, and you just leave it as is. Again, you have to remember with the laws of blessings, we're usually lenient. Okay, so let's see the footnotes on this. Okay, it's just a reference. So to Yom Tov is also called Shabbos. So he says the chesek shel moa, and I try to put it, but basically he quotes the Gemara in Sukkah that Yom Tov is also considered Shabbos. Mimacher sa Shabbos is like we find by Pesach. It says Mimacher sa Shabbos after the Shabbos is referring to Yom Tov. So therefore Shabbos also has the protection. Yom Tov also has the protection. Therefore we say Uprois Aleinu and we don't say Shomer Am Yisrael. But if you remember after K'dei Dibur, so what does it mean after K'dei Dibur? After you've already kind of said the words and let them settle. So now he says, how do we know that time? What is that time? So if you want to know what is the time of when you've said something, it's too late to go back. So he breaks it down for us over here. He says the time it takes to greet your Rebbe with the words Shalom Alai Rebbe Umari. The words are Bakri, or Rebbe Umari Shalom Alai. So there's 4 words. The time it takes you to say Shalom Alecha Rebbe Umari, once you've passed that little, whatever is a few seconds, it's too late to change your words. Which means Shalom to you, Rabbi, my teacher. Okay. So the Mishnah Berurah tells us that's the definition of Toch K'dei Dibur. So if you, like you said, Shomer Sam Yisrael, and then you right away say Pyrus, that's you've caught it before. You could say Shalom Aleichem Rabbi Yamayri. Okay. Noi Hagin, law number 3. Noi Hagin Loimar Vitfilas Arvis Vayunuchu Ba Ubeshachis Vmusu Vayunuchu Boy Uvemincho Vishabasas Kachacha Vayunuchu Bam. Shabbos Kachacha Vayunuchu Bam. What does he mean? There's the main blessing that we say throughout the Shabbos is the Elokeinu v'Elokei Avoseinu Ritzeinu b'Menuchaseinu, right? We're thanking God for giving us the day of rest. In that blessing, which is the final blessing before we do the Modim, and we finish off Baruch Atah Hashem Mikadesh HaShabbos, blessed is the Shabbos. There is over there, it says, V'hanchilenu Hashem Elokeinu ba'av v'ratzein Shabbos Kodshecha, in the singular. V'yenuchu, on Friday night we say V'yenuchu ba, we rest within it. Boy, ba is female, boy is masculine, bum is plural. There's many discussions of why Friday night we do ba, Shabbos day we do boy, and mincha we do bum. There's the Hasidic insight, the Kabbalistic insights. There's the way we are. Shabbos is a makabel. Shabbos is a receptacle. Friday night, we call it the Shabbos queen. By day, it's masculine. By mincha, we elevate. We know mincha is the highest point of Shabbos. Just everyone should know that. The most crucial part of Shabbos is the mincha part before the end of Shabbos. That's v'yinuchu bam. And there we change our mincha, he adds, that we also go plural on Shabbos. We don't say Shabbos kodshecha, which is what we say, Shabbos kodshecha is what we say in Friday night, morning, and Musaf. And by mincha we say Shabbasois plural kodshecha, v'yinuchu bam, they rest as plural. Okay. So that's there's many reasons given why, but in the Kabbalistic is ba is female, ba is masculine, and bam is plural. Acher tfilas halachash. Is any footnotes here? Oh, here we have footnote number 11. He says, at Ma'ariv we say thereon in the singular feminine gender ba. At Shachris Musaf we say thereon in the singular masculine gender, which is bai. At Mincha, we say it in the plural, which is bum, from, form. In the plural form, which is bum, which is they. So again, female, masculine, again, because Friday night, we know that Shabbos is at least almost, there's different stages within Shabbos. Friday night is Shabbos queen, Shabbos day is the masculine. Okay. Boy, we say both in Shachris and in Musaf. Bum is when we say in Mincha. After the silent Friday night prayer, everyone knows that in Shul, we say the Vayechulu, which is the completion, what Hashem said at the completion of the 6 days of creation. So everyone with the Chazan says the Vayechulu Shemayim Va'aretz. We say it while we're standing. You shouldn't be sitting when you say that. Why? Why do we say the Vayechulu? And why do we stand? We are witnesses. We testify to God's creation of the world. And the law is, the witnesses, when they testify, have to be standing. So we're saying testification. We're giving our testify. We're being the witness to God's creation. And if we're giving our witness, if we're being a witness, we have to do it while we are standing. Our testimony while we're standing. Okay, there's no footnotes on this. It's a self-understood halacha. Law number 5. Acher kach oymer shliach tzibor bracha achas mein sheva. Unlike anywhere else, any other time in our prayers, Friday night has a unique prayer. Only Friday night, not Yom Tov. This is so on Hashkivenu. When it comes to the Hashkivenu, the final blessing before the Amidah. We said that we say Ufroi Salenu Sukkah Shleimecha as opposed to Shomer Amoy Yisrael Ad. We say Yom Tov and Shabbos. We have a blessing on Friday night that we say after the Shemona Esrei. So everyone, what is the custom? Everyone says together with a chazan standing again because we are witnesses. Some have the custom to say 2 people together because witnesses have to be 2. So if you're davening alone, or if you davened without the minyan, there are people who have the custom to try and see if he brings in the footnotes. He does not mention the footnotes. Try to find a companion to say the Vayechula with, so you could say it as 2 witnesses as opposed to 1 person giving testimony. We know in Torah there's a requirement for 2 witnesses. Yes, Aaron, you want to ask something? I don't hear you. Yeah, absolutely no sound coming over.
Okay.
Volume.
Okay. So I see I see someone, they'll come up to like one of my friends or a rabbi and they'll say, "Can you say this prayer with me?" But it's only one person. Is that the prayer?
Yes, on Friday night you made this observation?
Yeah.
Yes, that would be the Vayechulu.
Okay, now what
Go
does
ahead.
a Vayahulu mean?
Right, the Vayechulu is a section of the Chumash. So if one was to open up the first Genesis, the beginning of Bereshis, so the first section of Genesis of Bereshis is the 6 days of creation, right? After God completed the creation, we have the verse that God says He completed the making of the heaven and the earth, and then God rested on the seventh day. So we say that on Friday night as witnesses to God's creation of the world and us going into Shabbos. So as witnesses, people, again, halachically, you have to have two people being, we need two, alpi shnei edim Yaakov v'davar, you need two people to establish testimony. So therefore, they would ask someone to say it with them.
So now my question is why don't they just make this a prayer for that we all say instead of having to ask?
You do. Some people who are not with, let's say, if you notice that it's probably someone who davens Shemona Esrei long, and by the time he's finished, the Chazan had already said Vayichulu.
Oh, I got you.
He's not with the minyan. But if you're in a scenario where everyone's davening with the minyan, you wouldn't have the situation.
Okay.
After we say with the Vayichulu, we have something that's unique to Friday night. Kind of like usually we have during the weekdays on morning and afternoon prayer, we have the Chazar Sashatz, we have the Chazan who repeats the Amida for those who can't say it. On Friday night, we have a short version of it. It's called Bracha Achas, one blessing like seven, because for Shabbos we have 7 blessings. We have the 3 in the beginning, 3 in the end, and the 1 for Shabbos, which is 7. That's why Shabbos, we don't have the 18 or 19 blessings like we have in the week. So it's called Achas Mi'ein Sheva, 1 of 7. Like one we took 7 blessings and put it into 1 blessing, which is Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu v'Elokei Avosenu. And then we say the Magen Aves, which most synagogues have a tradition to say it together, sing it together. And then we say the final blessing, which is the main blessing of Shabbos, Elokeinu v'Elokei Avosenu, and we finish Baruch Atah Hashem Mekadosh Shabbos. So that would be, and the Chazan only says that. So the Magen Aves, everyone sings together. That's the custom. And it starts off before the Magen Aves. We have Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu v'Elokei Avosenu Elokei Avram Yitzchak v'Yaakov El Gadol Giba v'Noira El Elyon. And then we go into the Magen Aves that everyone says with the Chazan, and the Chazan finishes off himself. So he says, "V'yesh lahakol la'amid b'shah." Hold on, Rebecca. "V'yesh lahakol la'amid b'shah sheshliach tzibur omer bracha zos." You should be standing when the bracha me'ein sheva is said. V'yishmu heitiv, and pay attention to it. Yes, Rebecca.
I forgot the name of the tefillah that you just mentioned now, but why does it say in the me'in whatever it was? How come it says in the siddur that you can't say that by yourself? You can only say it in a shul or in a group or something.
So we're going to have that right now. That he tackles that right now.
Oh, okay.
So he says, so v'yishmu heitiv, you should pay attention. V'noigim, the custom is sha'imrim imei magen aves. The custom is that that the community, the kahal, the congregation, say together with the chazan the section of Magen Aves ad zeich l'ma'aseh bereishis, until the completion of that section. Means there's the blessing before, the blessing afterwards, and there's a little middle piece, which is the Magen Aves that we all either sing or say together with the chazan. The gam hamispal b'chidus, and here he adds, which is Rebecca was mentioning, even if you daven alone, you would say the Magen Aves. So you would say the Veichulu, you would say the Magen Aves. You would not say obviously the blessing itself. Me'ein shalosh, that's only for the chazan to say, like the repetition after the Amida. The repetition is only said by the chazan. You can only say, you don't say the blessing before or afterwards. You just say the Magen Aves until Zeichem Aspirations, and you skip the Elokeinu v'Elokei Avosenu that we never say. You should not say more than that. Now, okay, we're going to see the reason why they made this blessing is, the reason why the blessing of Bracha Mein Sheva was made was because back in the day, the synagogues, the shuls, the synagogues were not in public places, like in communities. The synagogues were kind of outside of the community, and it was dark at night. And because of for safety, where people would come late to shul, and if everyone ran out, because everyone's running out from shul on Friday night to go make kiddush and shalom aleichem and meet your family. So in order to make sure that everyone has time to leave together, no one should be left alone in shul. So we kind of extended the Ma'ariv to the Magin, to the Me'ein Shalosh, to the Me'ein Sheva, to the extra blessing, to give time for everyone to complete the Arvis, and then everyone could leave together. So it was a safety issue. We don't find that issue by Yom Tov. It doesn't come up by Yom Tov. It's not a concern by Yom Tov, therefore we don't say it by Yom Tov. And so what one could obviously ask is we just said before that the reason why the blessing on Friday night is not like throughout the week is because one doesn't need Shemirath, doesn't need special watching. Obviously, there's different levels of watching. We're going to see how Pesach affects this. There's different levels of watching. There's the way Shabbos watches in general, that's why he points out that the klal, the congregation doesn't need special watching on Shabbos, but the individual does. And if the individual does, if we leave an individual alone in the synagogue, that individual, he or she, is at risk. So therefore, we have an extended ma'ariv so everyone can catch up. But if you're davening alone, we say the Magen Avis, but we don't say the main shalish because you're not in the synagogue. Okay, let's see the footnotes on this. We're in. I don't know if there are any footnotes actually.
Does this have to do with the minyan? So certain things you can only say in a minyan?
Say that again?
Okay. Certain things can only be said in a minyan. And that's why he says that these prayers are in the shul and these prayers are when you're alone.
Okay, so let's break it down. There's the first change that we have on Friday night versus Friday and Yom Tov night versus the weekday is how we finish the last blessing before the Amidah. During the week, we say Hashomer Amoy, the God who watches his nation, as a whole. We don't need to add that on Friday night because Shabbos watches us. Shabbos watches us as a whole. Now, people are running on Shabbos late and people are running out of shul early. So in order to keep everyone together, and we shouldn't leave an individual which does need watching even on Friday night, we added this one made up of 7 blessing that only the Chazan says. Now, only the Chazan says it because the repetition of the Amidah is anyways always. If you're going to daven mincha by yourself in the week, you don't say the Amidah, you don't repeat the Amidah, so you wouldn't say the 7th blessing. Why we say the Magen Aves is another reason, because it's already been a custom that we say it. So we say it also. We also say it ourselves on a Friday night because we say it with the Chazan when the Chazan is there. But to say the blessing is not a blessing for us to say. That's a blessing for the Chazan to say as a repetition of the Amidah. So just like we wouldn't say the repetition of Amidah alone, or if there wasn't a minyan in the shul, so too we don't say it on Friday night alone. Only the Magen Avis. Understand, Aaron?
Yeah.
Now we've broken down 2 levels of shmira, of watchfulness. So we're concerned on Friday night for the individual. We're not concerned for the community, so therefore we changed the end blessing of Hashkivenu from Shomer to Pares. However, we added the second blessing. We added this blessing to this extra blessing, so the person shouldn't be left alone in the shul because he or she needs watching. Okay, now he's like this: B'chol Shabbos Hashana Omer Brachas. Whenever there's Friday night, in the synagogue, we say this blessing. The Chazan says this blessing. We say the Vayichulu. The Chazan says the blessing. We join the Chazan in the Magen Avos, which now has the universal song that one sings together. Afilu Yom Tov, even if Friday night is the holiday. Ubishabbos shechol la'acher Yom Tov, or in a Saturday night, in a Friday night that follows Yom Tov. So if Yom Tov is Friday going into Shabbos. What about, I think it's this year. This year, we're going to be in synagogue. I think Matzah Shabbos, sorry. This year, so we're actually, Yom Tov is Saturday night. But let's say the first night of Seder is Friday night, which happens sometimes. Then, we don't say this blessing. So now we have the third level of watchfulness. Why don't we say this third blessing, this extra blessing on Friday night on Passover? Because the first night of Pesach, this only applies to the first night of Pesach, not the last night of Pesach. Also, obviously, if Friday night is Seder night, then the last day of Pesach is also Friday night. So why don't we say this blessing on Friday night of Seder night? Because Seder night is known as Leil Shimurim. It's a watchful night. We don't even say the Kriya Shema Alamita. We don't say the Shema at night before we go to sleep like we would say every other night, because we don't lock our doors on the night of the Seder. We all feel very safe on the night of the Seder because it's the night that God watches specifically the Jewish people. So now is a third level of watchfulness that even the individual doesn't need special watching on Friday night. Therefore, we omit this blessing on Friday night if it falls out on Seder night. Okay, so there's 3 levels of watchfulness. There's watchfulness during the week, There's watchfulness during Shabbos, and then there's an extra watchfulness during Friday night of on Pesach night. Yes, Aaron.
So we're supposed to leave our doors unlocked on Passover?
What?
We're supposed to leave our doors unlocked on Passover?
You're gonna have to ask your local rabbi about that. There are those who are very, very trusting on, because it says Lel Shemurim. It's a
I
night
mean,
for history. Someone once told me a story that when we were kids growing up, that in Brooklyn, when they would open the door for Elijah the prophet, he said once they opened the door in Brooklyn, and someone broke in and robbed the house. So from then on, they would let Elijah in through the window. So
I mean, I don't lock my doors when I'm up because I live in a building with a 24-hour guards. I'm lucky, but nonetheless, I never heard they were supposed to leave our doors unlocked. I heard they were supposed to open our doors for Elijah.
Yeah, but in general, there's supposed to be a feeling. Look, listen, they omitted a prayer because of the watchfulness. I mean, the reason they added the prayer is for not to leave someone alone in shul, which means to say that even though a person may be left alone in a shul, that the shul those days were not in the center of town or they were outside of this, the main inhabited area of the town. And they made a special blessing so no one should be left alone. We admit that blessing on Friday night of Pesach. So we're actually we're not just talking about it, we're actually experiencing the watchfulness and security of the night of Passover.
Mm-hmm.
If halachically you should leave your doors unlocked or open, speak to your local rabbi. Okay. Now we say, what about, so when do we say this seventh blessing? So what happens if a lot of times we have scenarios where families or friends or communities get together for a Shabbaton, right? Everyone knows what a Shabbaton is. And we do Shabbos in a non-conventional synagogue, community setting, whether it's in the mountains or etc. So do we say then the bracha me'ein Sheva Friday night? So he says, Ein Omer Ma'aseh Ela b'minyan kavua. We only would say it in an established congregation. But in a place that doesn't have 10 people davening together always, it's only temporary or once in a while. And for instance, some people have the custom that if they're doing that when there's a wedding in the family and Shabbos Sheva Brachas, instead of going to shul, everyone davens together, the family and friends daven together in their own private minyan. It's not an established private minyan. Or Bebeis Aval, there's also the custom to some people that, although the custom is usually not to do that, to daven together specifically on Shabbos if there's a mourner. So Ein Omer Ma'aseh, then it's not an established minyan, it's not an established shul, so they don't need this extra blessing to be systemized. This is a non-regular situation, and therefore we don't say the bracha me'ein Sheva. Hold on, Aaron. But if you have kind of gone like the summer, right? So if you go into the country for the summer, it's a few weeks. Even though it's not a regular minyan throughout the year, but it's an established minyan for a few weeks. So then, kamoi biyaridim, if there's a market and the market's lasting a few weeks, or a holiday, so then yesh la'imra, then we would say this me'ein Sheva. Yes, Aaron.
You answered my question. I was going to say, what about a camp where for the couple of months they have a camp and they have a place where they always daven, but during the rest of the year when camp's out, no one's praying.
Or like New York, a lot of people go to the country for a month or two in the summer. So
Yeah.
that would so here he says, what are we talking about? If the place is established when 10 people would pray for several weeks, so he quotes footnote number 14. According to the Taz is one of the commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch, the Mishnah Berurah and others, the text should be Eize Yomim, several days. Okay, so there's a disagreement of does it have to be several weeks or several days? So the Taz, which is one of the commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch and the Mishnah Berurah, the Chafetz Chaim, he says it doesn't have to be for a couple of weeks, it could be a couple of days. It means if you're just getting together for one Shabbos, Friday night, but if you're getting together, a Wednesday to Tuesday, or a few days, that's he said, what is the word he uses? Eize Yomim. Eize Yomim means several days, however you define several. Okay. Now we have a custom. This is not all shuls have this custom. In Chabad, we don't do this, but most Ashkenazi shuls do. I don't know, Aaron, you could tell us if Sephardim, if Assyrian shuls do as well. Of the chazan making kiddush in shul, right? So how do we do? Everyone knows that the chazan makes kiddush in shul, and the chazan doesn't drink. The children drink the wine. Usually, we have special kiddush wine, right? Little grape juice, so the kids could enjoy the wine as opposed to an adult. Yes, Aaron.
Okay, so to answer your question, first, my shul used to do it. We now don't do it. I never seen a Syrian shul do it. That doesn't say that the ones I didn't go to don't do it, but the ones I went to don't do it.
Okay. Different customs. So he says like this, but Medina's Elu is usually means Ashkenazi communities. The reason they did it was, and probably the reason why they didn't do it in Sephardi communities, is there were in Ashkenazi communities, they were less established, and there were more traveling, especially poor people that didn't, in Sephardi communities were different. They had a different structure for the community, and in Ashkenazi communities there were a lot of people traveling, a lot of people that didn't have homes, a lot of people that would go from community to community. It was a regular thing for groups of unfortunate people to be traveling in groups from city to city. So because of that, they made a lot of takanas, a lot of things to accommodate these groups of people who didn't have homes. So he says like this. But Medina, again, that was more something that was in Ashkenazi communities than in Sephardi communities. Not saying that because I know that for a fact, but that's what I understand. So Medina's Elu Noigin Shishliach Hatzibur Mikadesh Bebeis HaKnesses. The Chazan would make makes Kiddush in the shul. Leil Shabbos and Yom Tov on Friday nights and holidays. Chutz Mishnei Leilas Rishon Shel Pesach. Aside for Passover, obviously because Passover, the Kiddush is part of the 4 cups. But the Chazan is not doing it for his own benefit, but to be yaitze, to be mitzi, the people that don't have homes are not eating, or maybe eating in shul and don't have wine. And he can't drink before Kiddush. So how does the Chazan work this out? He doesn't want to drink himself because he's not being yaitze himself. He can't make a wasteful blessing, because it's a wasteful blessing. And there's not say no one in the shul drink, there's no one in the shul eating. So then nice and litem lekatan sheyigi lechinuch. You try to find a young boy who's just starting his education. I mean, not too young, but not bar mitzvah. Vakatan yishma es habracha. This child would listen to the blessing of the shul. This became already a kind of a ceremony in shuls. And the child is going to be yoitze with the chazan. So it covers all the bases. The chazan doesn't make a blessing that's levatal for waste. The chazan himself doesn't drink from it because he's planning to go home and make kiddush for his wife and family, or just at home. And the children drink the grape juice, what have you. The motil hachas akadim kodim kiddush, because even if the child is going to go home at home and listen to his father's kiddush, nevertheless, a child's allowed to eat before Kiddush, and therefore it's not a wasteful blessing, as is explained in Siman Kuf Samachalef in chapter 165. God willing. The im ein hakatim beis knesses. What happens? It's the summer or what have you. There are no kids in the basic knesses. Should you not do this custom of making Kiddush or not? Meaning to say, the kid, for instance, where I come from in Seattle, the Ashkenazi shul, the Bikur Cholim in Seattle, will make it. They don't do it just because even if there's no one in town that needs to listen to the Kiddush, there's no one passing through, the custom is the custom. So what would you do if there's no children and the Chazan doesn't want to make Kiddush, he's eating at home, and he doesn't want to be mitzi with this, so what do we do? And you're not supposed to make a wasteful blessing. So how do we get around all these issues? So he says, V'im ein kotim beis haknesses, there's no young children. You have to remember, we're not talking about a 13-year-old boy. 13-year-old boy is like an adult, according to halacha. So v'im ein kotim beis haknesses, if there's no children in the synagogue, so what do we do then? So then he says, Yichaven HaMekadesh Adam Acher, let someone else pay attention to the blessing. And Lotzis B'Kiddush to be yoytz in this Kiddush. V'yish Tashir Revius, and to drink the minimum amount you have to drink when it comes to Kiddush, which is a Revius, which we'll get into when the time comes, the amount of wine that is, when it comes to the laws of Kiddush. and kidei levarach bracha achreina, so you can make a blessing after the drinking of the wine. V'afa pikein. So what happens now? The chazan or someone else is the one that listens and drinks, and now her kiddush. So we have another question. We have the question of makim suda. We're going to see in a second. Kiddush can't just be drink. You can't just have kiddush. You have to have a meal. So the question is, do you have to drink extra wine, or do you have to, or is that, or minimal amount is the amount of the revius is the minimal wine that could be considered as a suda? We're going to see the difference of opinions. But what about making kiddush when you come home? You just made kiddush. So he says, nevertheless, you can make kiddush again in your home. To be mitzi your wife and family. So if there's someone who hasn't heard kiddush yet, so even though in theory the woman can make kiddush for herself, you could still go and make kiddush for them. If they can't make kiddush on their own. So here it seems from what he's saying is, according to the Kitzur, if the chazan makes kiddush on his own. So this really comes to a question about today the kiddush, right? If we don't find that custom that if a husband is in shul and makes kiddush by day, which a lot of people do, and have a kiddush and comes home, the wife and children haven't heard kiddush yet. Do they make themselves kiddush, or do you make kiddush for them? So he says, if they can't make kiddush on their own, you can make kiddush for them again. Even though you yourself were a yotzi with the kiddush that you've heard in the shul. Hold on, let me just finish the law. So we have the next question that we said that whenever one makes kiddush, it has to be in a situation of a meal. It doesn't have to be a full meal, but it has to be either mazonas. We make mazonas, or you could drink a full amount of wine. So what do you do then? It says b'shas chag. This is not a regular situation. There's no children home, etc. So there's no children in shul, etc. Same al paiskin the sfirlahu. We could rely on the opinions that say the dayim shais revius shleim menikais. Even if you drink just the revius, which is the minimum amount you have to anyways drink in order to make a bracha achreina, that's considered makom suda. That's not a typical situation, but in this situation, atypical situation, then one could make rely on just drinking that revius and then making a bracha achreina and then coming home and making kiddush again for your family. Again, unless you can hold on, Rebecca. Let's say someone's a chazan and shul and doesn't have a family at home and comes home and he's eating alone. Would he make kiddush again? If that's all those questions, of course, have to be discussed. So here, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says better to drink an additional revius besides the revius that you drink to be able to make the drinking in the kiddush. It means that we know that there's a custom sometimes. Let's say Pesach. If you have a kiddush in shul on Pesach, and Pesach there's no mazonas. You can't have cookies on Pesach, even if you have very fancy shahakal cookies, but they're not cookies, they're not mazonas. The only thing that you can establish a meal on is either bread or mazonas, right? So if we're not washing, we have mazonas. That's why everyone has crackers or something after kiddush at a kiddush. What happens during Pesach when you can't make mazonas? So the other way to do it is to drink a revius of wine. Wine is also a special food that establishes a meal. So therefore, he says over here that if you're in the synagogue and you're going home and you don't want to eat anything, so there's no meal and there's no cookies or anything. So what you do is you have the wine that you drink for the kiddush, which is kamalai lugmav, the swallow, and on top of that you have an additional revius, which is what you would do on Pesach in a kiddush to make a makom suda. The hainu kamalai lugmav mishum the kiddush, the oid revius mishum suda. So then you have the kiddush, which is the first swallow. And then on top of that, you do a revius, which I think is about three and something ounces, to drink on top of that to establish the meal. Yes, Aaron.
Okay, so let's, for whatever reason, some of your family didn't come to shul. Mostly it'd be your wife, so she doesn't come. Now, in my family, my son is a Hazan. He likes Hazan. So he wants to come back and say the blessing, but he doesn't want to drink the wine because he says we already did it. So he hands it off to my wife, his mother. Is that acceptable? Is that the way to do it? Or
are you giving an actual scenario or are you asking a question?
I'm telling you the scenario, and then I'm asking you, is it right or wrong or somewhat in between? So
hold on a second. Your son davens and shul. He makes kiddush and shul. We're
We
talking
make
about the
kiddush
weekday.
on Saturday because we have a kiddush, but sometimes
Oh,
my wife doesn't come or my daughter doesn't come for whatever reason.
yeah.
And then we go back and we'll only eat a little bit at the shul, but we'll come back and re-eat more food at the house. So my son will say the blessing, but then he says, we've already said the kiddush, so you have to drink it.
Yeah,
So,
so that what your son is doing is the best case scenario. He could also drink it and give her to drink. But if he doesn't want to drink it, and he's saying basically that's what he's doing is the best case scenario, where he's going to drink it. He's going to make the kiddush because he wants to be mighty them. At the same time, she will drink it because she's the one who's the kiddush for. If, for instance, everyone is in shul, then you come home, you don't, and you've done the mazonos and all that. So you come home, you just could wash, or don't have to make kiddush again. But you
but
shouldn't.
now when you wash it, you're washing for the bread,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but what if you washed? Okay, so you went to shul, you're having kiddush, you had a piece of bread, for whatever reason they had more food, and then you come home, you still want to eat a little bit. Do you have to say the whole thing all over again?
We're talking about the whole thing. You mean the kiddush?
No, okay, so you went to shul, you had kiddush, you had bread,
Yeah,
you
you
had
get some herring crackers, good, right? So we
yeah,
did, yeah.
yeah, but you had a
Right.
piece of bread, a real bread.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so they put rolls out because sometimes they put
I might see.
meat out
Yeah,
and
yeah, sure.
deli meat. So you make a
Okay.
little sandwich. So the point is, now you come home, you still want to eat a proper lunch. Okay, so do you have to say all this again because you've said the after blessing after you ate?
So in theory, if you're at a kiddush and shul and there's washing and sitting, all the things that are required for a established meal, and now you come home and you're still hungry, you don't have to wash. It means you could wash if you want to make a chal shudas, you wash for the third meal, but you don't have to wash. You could, if let's say you want to go home and have a bowl of cholent or a piece of chicken or a piece of fish, and because you're still hungry, then you don't have to wash. You've already washed in shul.
Okay.
Rebecca.
Yeah, so let's say this happens a lot. Let's say I go to a Shabbos meal with a lot of other people and I haven't heard Kiddush yet, and a guy at my table who either already made kiddush or already was yotze with someone else's kiddush and is like sitting and eating his meal already. He says, "Oh, I'll make kiddush for you." So, like, technically, I could make kiddush myself. Is it better if he does it a second time, or is it better if I do it for a first time?
Best would be if you make the kiddush. You see clearly the Shulchan Aruch says if the woman can't do it, then the man can make for her. Also, it depends. If you're in a group of people, and someone can make kiddush, then you would make the kiddush. You can make kiddush for yourself. People
Okay.
like that. I mean, unless there's for social reasons, it's better for him to make kiddush for you. That's okay. But I'm saying otherwise, best would be for you to make kiddush.
Okay, got it. And then also, I always hear different things about Kiddush b'makom Suda. So,
Mhm.
like, let's say, like, I eat in the morning on Shabbos. I know a lot of people don't, but I need to eat something. I can't go so many hours without eating. So I make Kiddush before I make mazonos, and then let's say I'm eating at home for lunch, and so a couple hours later, I'm gonna be eating, like washing and making hamotzi at the same table. So then should I make kiddush a second time or should I not?
Repeat the end of the question. You
So
ate in the morning
yeah,
before davening?
kiddush. I made kiddush before I had mazonos, like for breakfast, let's say.
Okay.
But then an hour, like 2 hours later, I'm gonna have the lunch suda. I'm gonna be washing and making motzi. So it's the same table. I'm sitting in the same place. Make should I make kiddush again?
No, no, no. But I'm not certain that I'm not certain I'm not certain your system is correct. If you're talking about waking up at 7:30, 8 o'clock and you want to have a coffee and cake and then daven at home and then eat your suda, I'm not certain that you'd make kiddush before you daven. I think the best thing would be to have coffee and cake. The idea of not eating is not to eat before, is not to eat once you've davened. Once before you daven, you could eat, unless you're a person who doesn't eat ever before Shachris. Let's say Chabad, we're not careful with that. In Chabad, we'll drink and eat mazonas even. It's a Chabad custom to actually eat mazonas before we daven, right?
Wow.
So we'll eat. I'll wake up in the morning and have cookies and cake or whatever it is. And like even if I want to have a piece of fish if I'm hungry, whatever. I wouldn't make kiddush then. You don't make kiddush till after you daven. So
Yeah,
first,
I know that. I know there's no chiyuv until after like your.
what I would change in your schedule is I would have my coffee and cake, daven, and then make kiddush makam suda.
But what I'm talking about is like I wake up late, so I'm talking about like let's say it's like 11 o'clock and like the shul is finished. It's like finishing up around that time. Like that's the time that I want to eat something, and then I want lunch.
I'm still not altogether like again, and I don't want you don't need to give too many details. But I'm saying, let's say hypothetically, someone wakes up at 2 o'clock, 2:30, 3 o'clock. You know what I mean? So that could happen too. So would you make kiddush first or not? It's still I still think if you're planning to daven, if you're not going to daven for whatever reason, it's not going to work out, and this is your meal, then that's something else. But if you're planning on davening and that's your schedule, then I would still have my coffee and cake, daven, and then make kiddush, even if it's 11 o'clock.
Okay, thank you.
Aaron.
Okay, just one comment, and then I'm going to ask my question. So the comment I was going to make, my son always says that he doesn't like to eat before he prays, but he'll drink, and he tells me basically it's don't have bread. As long as you don't have bread, you're good. Have something so that you concentrate. But like I'm diabetic, so I have to eat. But he says just don't partake in bread before you go pray. Then after you pray, you can come back and have all the bread you want.
And there's a famous Hasidic saying that says better to eat before to daven after you eat than to eat. That if some people they daven fast and their whole davening is about getting to food, better if that's your scenario that your whole davening is focused on finishing it so you could eat. Better eat, relax, and daven properly.
Okay. So
your question is
okay. So my question is this: I've heard two different customs, and my son's brought them up. I don't think he knows which one is which, which is the proper one or they're both proper, whatever. But he says, okay, so there's two customs. And because he goes to YU, that's why I ask him a lot of questions. Go back and ask your rabbi. But what custom number one is one person says the blessing and only one person has to drink from the cup, but everyone has to hear it and see him. Okay, then there's a custom, everyone gets a cup, one person says the blessings, but everyone has to drink their mouthful.
Yeah, so some people have the custom specifically to drink, but it's not necessary to drink, especially if you can't drink alcohol.
So like what we're saying is that even with grape juice, my daughter does not like grape juice. So she says, we don't have.
I would not insist on drinking, no.
Okay, thank you.
I want to even more. When my wife got once, what do they call it over here? Hepatitis. And the Rav said he was over before Pesach, said that one of the things after hepatitis, to be very, very careful with alcohol, that he said that even grape juice, that seemingly he says it's a non-alcoholic drink, he says, but it has very, 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 very small amount of alcohol that's not even considered alcohol enough for for them to put it on the label or to forbid it for children. He says she shouldn't even drink grape juice. If you can't drink something, you definitely don't. Okay, let's just do the footnotes on here, and then I'm going to get to your question that I saw you on the chat. What was the question here? So it says, since he does not fulfill the mitzvah with this kiddush, I mean, talking about the chazan doesn't want to drink, right? So for kiddush must be accompanied by the suda meal, and therefore the chazan plans on going home and eating his meal then. So therefore he doesn't want to listen to he doesn't want to be yotze with the kiddush in shul, but he has to say it. So if there's a child, the child would drink it. He says, who has reached the age of chinuch. So he says, what does this mean? According to the Pri Megadim, another commentary on the Shulchan Aruch, this refers to a child. What is the age of Kehilchathah? Means let's say you have in the shul you have infants. You could have a shul. Someone brings their toddler to shul, and someone brings their bar mitzvah boy to shul, or someone brings their middle age child. So what's the age of chinuch that you could give the grape juice to? So the Pri Megadim defines it as this refers to a child of 5 or 6. So 6 is when the chinuch starts, the education starts. There's certain things like in fasting, other things that where the child's already starting for education, where we start getting the child ready for Torah mitzvahs, even though he or she's not obligated until they're bar or bas mitzvah. So, but 5, 6 is the age of education. But Mishnah Berurah holds that it refers to a child of 6 or 7. Okay, so the Pri Megadim says chinuch starts at 5 or 6, and the Mishnah Berurah disagrees and says 6 or 7. And I have to check if they're arguing a factual argument. The Mishnah Berurah was a few hundred years after the Pri Megadim. Pri Megadim was earlier. Maybe it's a time versus age issue. Okay, so it means that kids were a little more mature, in the times of the Pri Megadim than they were in the Mishnah Berurah. Okay, so I have to see the source of it. The age depends on the child's intelligence. So there we go. So how intelligent the child is, that the child is able to get an education, right? You're not going to start educating a 1-year-old. Chinuch, what does chinuch mean? Chinuch is the term used here to describe the age in which we must begin to train a child to fulfill the performance of mitzvahs. What does it mean he must? Chinuch is a mitzvah. You can't expect a child at 13 years old or 12 years old to start doing Torah mitzvahs. They have to have an education for that. Get ready for Shabbos, or you can't expect the children at 13 to stop, turning on the lights on Shabbos. Okay, 17. 18. A lot of people start at 3 years old, but here he doesn't mention 3. He mentions 4, 5, or 6, 7. Okay. He says, and thus the chazan the bracha was not in vain. We're talking about giving it to the child, I think. So he says, footnote number 18. But if the child is not of chinuch, what happens? Okay, the child is under 4, 5, or 6, 7. The chazin's bracha is a bracha in vain. So here he teaches us something. What makes it not being a bracha that should not be a bracha in vain is if it's an educational experience. If you're going to go and give it to a 2-year-old, that's according to all opinions is under the age of education, that's not considered a blessing because you're not accomplishing anything. Just that the child is drinking it. There's no chinuch. There's no education here. So says the Magen Avram. The Bach, another commentary. These are all commentaries on the Shulchan Aruch. The Bach, most of them so far are the Ashkenazi ones. The Bach rules that it is preferable to give it to a child not yet the age of chinuch, and the Aruch HaShulchan 5 says that this was also the custom in his days. Okay, so the Bach actually goes to the other opinion and says no, because if you're teaching your child an education, what kind of education are you giving them to drink before Kiddush? They shouldn't be drinking before Kiddush. Better to give it to a toddler who's not yet in the age of education, even though there's no obligation of education, but he is drinking it. So it's not a waste, than to educate your child to be drinking and eating before Kiddush. Yes, Aaron.
What if you're teaching? Okay, so you're teaching your kid about the blessing, and you have to say the words to teach him what the words are. So now you said the prayer, but you're planning on reading them many times so that he could learn the blessing. You're not going to drink for each time, so you're saying it in vain?
No. There's the education of the law and there's the education of the pronunciation of the words. It's not the same thing. Teaching a child how to read something is different than teaching them how to do something. Understand?
I don't understand the difference. They're both teaching and they're both very good for your child to learn.
Okay, so if to teaching a child how to read something to learn is different than doing the mitzvah. For instance, when you take your child to shul on Shabbos, you're not teaching them how to read. The idea is you take them to the experience. Today it became a big issue. We're running out of time, so I want to finish the footnotes. But it became a big not issue, a big conversation. Let's say in today's day and age of what does it mean to educate your children about going to shul. So there are those who feel that shul should be geared towards children. So they have what's called children's minions, which is very common, which is not just children's minions, but the kids go off, leave their parents and have someone lead the minion, but they'll have a whole shul, which has at least 10 adults, but it's a children's minion. I even know there's a minion in Miami where there's someone running around in a clown suit on Shabbos. And everything's geared around the child for the education. Another school of thought, I think I wasn't educated like that. Another school of thought, I'm older. But another school of thought is that no, that children should be educated to go to a proper shul. What kind of, the education should be that when they get older, they know how to daven in an immature shul. So there's different stages of the education. Teaching them how to read is different than giving them the experience of making kiddush. So therefore, when you make the bracha for the Kiddush in the shul, that's the education according to, let's say, the Magen Avram and the Mishnah Brura about the Kiddush ceremony, teaching them how to make a blessing. You don't have to drink every time. Okay.
Gotcha.
Let's just finish off here. 19 is, if there's no child in the synagogue, the one who recites the Kiddush, saying the one who recites the Kiddush is preferable to another adult. If you have a question, who should drink the wine, better to be the one who made the Kiddush, unless for whatever reason he cannot. He says, or another person should have in mind to fulfill the mitzvah of Kiddush, because there you have to have Kiddush if you're drinking. So the ruling is based on the opinion of the Gaonim who hold you may recite the Kiddush in one place, having in mind to eat the Suda in another place. So if you have in mind, it means everyone's going to leave shul eventually and go home and eat. Hopefully, there's no Kiddush. We're talking about Friday night, right? So then you would do even the person who's drinking and having the full mouthful and the extra revius, all that, and making a bracha. Nevertheless, the Gaonim say you could use your intentions to eat the meal later, and you could connect the meal to the meal that way. Although you should still drink enough to make a makom suda. Okay. What is a revius? Let me just see how many footnotes you have left in this law. Okay, what is a revius? A revius is like this. Drinking the amount of wine is considered a meal. Thus, the Kiddush is accompanied by a Suda of wine. Okay, this is what we said before. If you drink an extra revius after the swallow, the revius wine is a specialty food or drink that establishes a meal. It's not like water or Coke or something like that. Some people say that alcohol, like whiskey, or make Kiddush on Shabbos day with whiskey. But the idea is that still doesn't establish a meal. Whiskey won't establish a meal. Wine does. So wine is a davar chashuv. So it's considered the Gaonim say it's a Suda. The Ran, another commentary, he is actually that's the Rabbeinu Nisim, who is from Spain, maintains that according to the Yerushalmi, which is the Jerusalem Talmud, you can make Kiddush in one place, having in mind to eat the meal in another place, which we said before. Then you wouldn't require that extra revius. So he says, even not under the one roof, even if you're going home. Therefore, by drinking the revius of wine, one certainly may rely on the combined opinions of the Ran and the Gaonim in fulfilling the obligation of Kiddush with the Kiddush in the synagogue to be in Makom Suda. So we're combining a whole bunch of opinions to make it permissible for the Chazan or someone else to drink this wine, because either you're going to have a revius that's a makom suda, or you have intention to eat at home, which is a makom suda. All these together combine to the effort to make it that it's permissible, because we want to keep the custom of making the kiddush in the synagogue. Footnotes number 23, 24, 25. Oh, nice long ones here. So it says who owed. We rely on the poskim who hold that it's sufficient to drink a whole revius from the cup. So this is what we mentioned before. Drinking the amount of wine is considered a meal. Okay, he's repeating what we said before in footnote number 22. Drinking a certain amount of wine is considered a meal. Thus, the kiddush is accompanied by a suda by drinking the revius. The Ran, okay, this is repeating what we said before, maintains that according to Yerushalmi, you can make a kiddush in one place. All right, this is the same footnote as before. Footnote number 24 is additional to a swallow. What's the additional to the swallow? If you hold the wine is one side of if you hold what is a mouthful? How much is a mouthful? It says if you hold the wine in one side of your mouth, your cheek will be visibly full. This measurement varies from person to person, obviously, the size of your mouth. Usually, it is more than half a revius. So this is a little over, I guess, an ounce and a half. If your cheek holds more than a revius, you need not drink more than a revius. Let's say you have a very big mouth or you have very expandable cheeks. So then you obviously don't have to drink, if you could put in a lot more, then you don't have to drink that much. Footnote number 25 is so that the mouthful is counted for the kiddush and the revius is counted for the meal. So it says the ruling is according to the levush, bach and taz, and even and the Evan Ozir. It rules that the revius is sufficient. Okay, this is again going back. So let's just to break this down. The conclusion is if you are in synagogue, there's no children. The children have to be, so there's different opinions. Should the children be the age of 4, 5, 6, 7, or specifically under, depending how you view the chinuch, the education. If there's no children at all in shul, so either the chazan or someone else drinks it, and you have to have makom sud, you have to have a place of your meal that you make kiddush in the place of a meal. So therefore, you would drink on top of that a revius, combining the opinion that says that a revius, a measurement of a revius of wine, which is about 3.5 ounces, is considered a makom suda. That's a meal, or together with the opinion of the Ran that says having intention to go eventually home is also makom suda. So all this together allows for us to keep the tradition, which we're trying to do of davening in shul. Why can't a woman drink it? A woman can drink it. So Lior, yes, just going to get to your question, then we'll finish the class here. You came in, you asked about the being left alone in shul. The reason we have the 7th blessing or the extra blessing on Friday night is not to leave people alone in shul on Friday night, especially those days when the shul was outside of the community and it was unsafe to be walking alone at night. So for people not to walk alone at night, so they made an extra blessing, so everyone should leave shul together. Any other questions before we finish the class?
So, so when they do the kiddush in shul and they don't have any children, can they give it then to a woman to drink?
In shul?
Yes. I've never seen it done, but
it's an excellent question. I would assume, unless for extreme circumstances, it would not be done because of tznius and the separation of the mechitza.
okay.
But if you, again, you have a lot of kiddushim today that the kiddush itself is a mixed seating, a mixed community, which most shuls have when it comes to kiddush. Could be in such a scenario, it'd be like having a meal at home where the woman could drink the kiddush. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Aaron.
Okay, I'm going to add, our shul does, when we used to do the kiddush, okay, our shul sponsors one of the group homes, like your daughter, but they live in a group home. It's a bunch of guys. So some of them are quite old, but we don't have a child in there. And even if we did, we invite them, if they would like, to come and partake in the wine or the grape juice. And they're definitely not children, but they're special. I call them special kids, even though there's some of them are older than me.
So what do you mean? Is to go in and make kiddush for that in that scenario?
So we would do sometimes there's a kid, but sometimes there's not. So when there's not a kid, we definitely, when we used to do it, ask them to come up. And when we would have kids, some of them still wanted to come up. They felt like it was a treat. They wanted to come up, and we gave it to them. We gave them a sip from the kiddush cup. I mean, we poured it in a separate cup, but whatever.
So you're asking a question or just?
So I'm asking a question: is that acceptable? Even though our rabbi did it, I'm asking: is that acceptable? Because some of them are like 50 years old, but there's.
No, that would definitely be acceptable. It's a conversation that we can't get into right now, and I have to look into it. But in the sensitivity of the question, definitely, absolutely, to give anyone in that scenario to drink. The question is if it still would be better to give it to another child or to an adult also to drink, because if there's an obligation of chinuch in such a scenario. But
I mean, let me just
definitely for the sensitivity of the situation, that's the right thing to do.
Let me say this to you also. We try to give them, blessings and stuff where they're able to do it. So there's one guy who, he can go to work and everything, and so we let him up on the Torah to give blessings. I mean, we treat them like everybody else, but they 100%. Do live in a group home, and we feel proud that we can sponsor a whole house.
Absolutely, that's beautiful. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining. Happy Purim to everyone. Fast, easy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Just getting mitzvot. Chag Sameach. Happy Purim. Chag Purim Sameach.